Welcome to Beyond Six Figures, the podcast that helps business coaches to micro-niche, get noticed, and become fully booked. Learn from top industry leaders who've successfully taken their businesses and their lives beyond six figures. Get ready to level up your coaching business and make this world a better place, one business at a time. And now, here's your host, Ziv Raviv.
Welcome to Beyond Six Figures. Our guest today is Corinna M. Hagen. She is the founder of Zaradigm, an author, leadership communication coach, and a fractional CMO whose clients span Fortune 500 companies, startups, and high-growth ventures. With over 2 decades of experience in management consulting and transformation, Corinna empowers emerging leaders to master high-stakes communication, build impactful personal brands, and drive measurable business growth. She's the author of the Mastering High-Stakes Communication at Work, a powerful guide for leaders who want to show up with confidence and clarity when it matters most. We're thrilled to have her on the show to share strategies and actionable practical tips about client acquisition and leadership and influence and communication. So glad to have you here with us. Hello, Corinna.
Hi, Ziv. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Well, we're going to talk about all sorts of things today, including your latest book and the story behind it and how it can help people. We might even include some of your ideas from it and allow everyone to get a sneak peek into communication skills and leadership skills that are so important for all business coaches out there. But before we go there, I want to hear about your story. How did you get to the point where you publish books and you host podcasts and you coach and you're also a CMO, a fractional CMO? So I feel like there's so many things that you do that are with high potential and high transformation potential even for your clients. But you started somewhere. So tell us that story.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, Ziv. You know, it's a loaded question. And I think probably you understand too, like you don't get somewhere overnight. These things evolve over time, right? I didn't do all these things, all in the beginning. I come from a management consulting background, just like you pointed out. So I've worked with a lot of senior leaders early on in my career. And, in consulting, there's a high learning curve. So you get to work with a lot of different industries very quickly. And so also early on, working with senior leadership, talking directly to the C-suite, very early on in my career. And so the keyword that you just mentioned there is transformation. And I didn't realize this until later because brands evolve. Before we started the recording, we had like a quick chat and I shared with you, right, that brands are always evolving. You build your brand over time. You may have an idea of what you want to present yourself as, but then as you're learning what resonates with the market and what does my experience actually bring to the table if I now do something else, because I wasn't always an executive coach. So I started out getting into coaching after I decided to leave corporate. I was being coached. I had an experience that was transformative. I understood that coaching is distinctly different from consulting. And so I still have these two arms. That's why, with the fractional CMO, that's the consulting arm, consultative, versus coaching. And they're very distinct in the approach and what you do there. Because one has more of the implementation part attached to it versus the coaching is the transformation part. Not that consulting doesn't have transformation, but the transformation connects the two. But coaching is very distinct in that. But I had to learn over time, like, what is that? How do I show up differently when I'm a coach? And how do I present my narrative, not just when I'm selling, but also how do I show up when I'm a consultant? Two very different roles that I'm playing and also how I'm presenting that. So that evolved over a period of many, many years to get to this point.
And how long did it take you to decide to have both of the options? Was it something that you started with one of them and then the other one started to grow on you, or did you always go for both?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So when I decided to venture into coaching, I'm very strategic in my thinking. I thought, okay, so where can I right now add value, and where do people buy from me because it's believable? And the lowest hanging fruit was consulting. So I kept that while pursuing the new product offering, so to speak, right? The new service that I'm adding in, to then say, okay, so how do I make this adjacent, right? Whereas it's an understandable sale, and presenting this offer to then reach out to coaching clients, and then finding strategic partners that I would work with. So it's not just me selling one-on-one, maybe working with some companies that already do some coaching where, I would maybe earn less than what I would earn if I have private clients, but I would work with these partners and they would do the selling and I would get the coaching experience so people could then say, oh, she already has that experience. So it becomes then more and more believable, your testimonials.
In your consulting side of things, as a fractional CMO, do you have a team that will actually do the job, like more of a done for you type of a thing, or do you work independently?
Yeah, it's a project based. I have a team that depends on what client I take on. There will be a team involved or not. That depends really on the size of the consulting engagement in this case.
So you will contract the team based on the specific project?
Yeah, they're not full-time employees. Mm-hmm. Correct.
So tell me a little bit about your passion in business. Do you have a specific industry that you prefer working with, or a specific type of a client? What's exciting for you when it comes to the business of a client?
Sure. So my passion is communication, and that's communication in every way, shape, or form, whether it is personal branding, whether it's marketing, building a company's brand, building a personal brand, leadership transformation, where it's, how do I communicate as a leader? Hence the book, Mastering High Stakes Communication for Leaders, right? And so, communication is kind of the key point that everything circles around, and that takes different shapes or forms. So for companies, I very often build their brands and make them strong, build their campaigns, set their marketing operations on solid legs to stand on. So really communication is my passion there. Is there an industry? That's interesting. I could do this probably for any industry. The industries that resonate the most with me, where I get clients without even having to look very hard, is tech. Anything tech, right? Whether that's an IT service provider, a SaaS company, a gaming company. Yeah.
I love it. And a lot of times in software companies, in tech companies, communication could really create a huge gap. If there's problems with communications, there will be problems with quality, there will be problems with sales, there will be problems with product match and so on. And the investors want their money back. The market is moving fast. It's just so important to be there in a way that is clear inside your team and with the world. How would you say your books have facilitated your growth as a coach?
That's an excellent question, Ziv. I almost want to say, try to write a book if you need clarity on what you stand for. So the number one thing it did for me is bringing me clarity, because if I have to write a book about my knowledge and how I'm going to use that to help my clients, and it's not just a book that helps my clients, it's also a book that helps my brand, right? To articulate what am I capable of helping you with. If you want more clarity on what you stand for and what the market will accept from you and strengthening that brand, write it down. And you can see, if you follow any of the people that are good brand builders or good marketers, they will tell you, write the thing down that you want to express, because in writing, clarity develops, as opposed to speaking out loud. By the way, when I work with Fortune 100 leaders and they have struggle expressing their ideas clearly, I will say to them, you know what? You need a bridge. Before you get there, any speaker is not an overnight success just like that. If you need to articulate your thoughts with more clarity, create those bridges. There are certain frameworks or tools that you can use to do that. But most often, if it like the general baseline of the core ideas that you have, like the brand, like who are you? What do you stand for? Articulate them in writing and then refine them. Like return back to it after a few hours or after a day. How would you change the narrative? Share with other people what that narrative is, get some feedback, right? Get the feedback loop, refine that thing a little bit more. And there you go. Then you have a clearer message to articulate for your brand. So bottom line, to answer your question there again, what did the book do for me? It helped me to articulate more clearly what I stand for and how I can help somebody and why it matters.
I love it. And, there's a saying that if you learn something by yourself, there's one person that is learning. But if you're teaching someone in a room, there's two people that are learning. So we learn by teaching, and we get clarity by either answering questions or by describing what are we really believing in and what is our framework. So let's talk a little bit about the book and about some of the ideas of mastering communication for leadership. Is that, what is it about leaderships and about leaders that communication is so hard for them?
What a great question. Why is it so, it sounds almost cynical when you ask it. It can be so hard. You're a leader already. But everybody comes into a coaching session with the same desire and the same challenge almost. Like a lot of leaders will ask me, what do other leaders ask when they're in a coaching session? Which tells me everybody's curious. Am I the only one having the problem? I can assure you, you're not. Everybody has the same challenge. They want their ideas heard. They don't want to get interrupted before they have finished sharing their idea. They want to get buy-in for their idea. They want their careers to advance, right? There's so much at stake. They want people to be influenced. If you're a leader, you need your team to follow through on what the vision that you set. So how do you mobilize a team so everybody swims in the same direction? Yeah. If you're on your way to leadership and you don't yet have direct reports, how do you influence now without having formal authority? People sometimes think they need to have the title in order to influence somebody. Not true. There is such a thing, and there's a famous book by that too, which I can highly recommend. Leadership Without Authority, very important skill to learn. And I would say you can have so many great skills. You can be a great problem solver. You can be very charismatic, but if you have not learned to communicate effectively, you will not lead well. You'll not make it far, because in order to have let's say you're a good problem solver, in order to get buy-in for the idea on how to approach this solution that you're suggesting, you still have to communicate well. You have to learn how to communicate in crisis, how to resolve conflict, maybe overcome resistance to something that you're trying to lead through, especially when there's transformation going on in your organization, right? So that's really, all those things is where communication comes in. Also, interestingly, you think leaders don't have a problem with self-advocacy or political savvy. But, the higher you go, sometimes people have an aversion to that. They say, I'm apolitical, I don't want to do those things. There's no such thing. Every organization, even an organization that's highly collaborative and tries not to play the hierarchy cards, every organization, wherever humans are, there is a need for political savvy, of playing well together, right? We're all back in high school. We have to find a way to get along.
Wow.
Right? And not everybody is on board. So that's where communication comes in.
We started with the high stakes of communication in a company and how everyone there wants to be heard. And everyone have their own desires, their own motivation. Sometimes it's to influence the product, and sometimes it's to actually advance in their career. And in real life, it's actually sometimes a bit of a jungle, just like in high school, where there's so many voices and you have to actually work on those skills. You actually need some communication techniques. So what are maybe an example of some practical tools that you talk about in your book that people can take on maybe specific situations or in general to be better communicators?
Yeah, let me think. So one of the key questions that I get very often from somebody who is early on in their leadership career to somebody who is already seasoned, how to be concise. How do I bring my point across? Because there's so many thoughts in my head, and then I blast something out without it being refined, and all of a sudden, I will lose people's attention, right? So I'll start sharing an idea, and then like the eyes glaze over, and you realize you're losing people. Or like the scenario happens where you start speaking and you get interrupted, nobody hears you. Somebody else heard your idea, shares it, refined, and they get the applause, right? They're like, oh, this is a great idea. And you go, that was my idea. I just said that, but maybe not in those words. And so there's several things you can do, but I mean, the quickest thing I can tell you, learn to stop yourself before you share. Don't ruin your contribution score. And I learned this from Stephen Bartlett, who has the Diary of a CEO podcast, right? And he shared one day this concept of a contribution score. And I really want anybody who's listening to this show, be alert to this. Anytime you speak up, you either add to your contribution score or you detract from it. So you want to gain points. So when you speak up, make sure it's refined and has value. So if you're not sure yet what you want to say, you have an idea, hold your breath. Nobody will know that you have that idea and want to say something. It's okay if you pause for a couple of seconds, or maybe let other people keep doing the talking and write down what your idea is. Create a few bullet points until you have some clarity of what this is. There's a method I borrow from interview preparation. So career coaches often have like the STAR method, SOAR, CAR. I love the CAR method. Is only 3 letters in the acronym, means it keeps you shorter than you have any more letters introduced, yeah? Challenge, action, result. And this is for interview prep, but you can borrow this. So we're going to repurpose this. What's the challenge? Why am I sharing this idea? There's something we're trying to solve, right? What's the challenge you're coming up against? Why are we even talking about this? Action, what is my idea? What am I proposing? Result, what will sell my idea? Why would this be beneficial? Very simple. Challenge, action, result, right? CAR. And you write down your idea, and then you're ready to share it. It will come out much clearer. It will take practice because communication takes practice. Just like playing tennis, you won't play Wimbledon without swinging the racket a little bit.
I love it. CAR, it's nice and precise. It gets you from point A to point B. Challenge, action, results. So I want to ask you a bit of a personal question about your business, starting with your business name. What's up with that? How did you come up with Zaradigm? What did you intend for it to be doing for you as a name, as a business?
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking that. Nobody ever asked that. They wonder, like, how is it pronounced? Well, it's not that hard. It's like paradigm with a Z, and that's exactly where that comes from, right? So it's paradigm, and then Zara, the rising sun. So it's understanding there's an epiphany that needs to happen for us to have a paradigm shift. So creating that awareness, letting the sun rise on the awareness of what needs to shift before you can make that transition, that paradigm shift. And I'm really big on focusing on paradigms because sometimes we believe in things and we adhere to things with our underlying beliefs, with our value system, with our behavior. We're very committed to doing things a certain way. We don't even know what we have adopted there. Like, what is that paradigm? Sometimes it's like, I'll give you an example. When I was in consulting, one of the CEOs I worked with, he said, because we need to make the office look nicer because the office is the consultant's living room because that's where we live. And I thought, oh, yes. It just encourages working longer. I understood what he was trying to do. But it's a paradigm. It's this understanding that a good consultant, there was a little bit more behind it, but it was this understanding that a good consultant is only a good consultant if he turns the lights on before the client and he turns the lights off after the client goes, right? But what are we doing? Are we measuring results or are we measuring effectiveness? And so that's why I'm saying, like, it's not bad to have certain standards or cultural, behavior rules, what have you. But to question, why am I doing this actually? To understand, who am I serving? What am I doing with this?
So paradigms are actually stories that we tell ourselves sometimes. And those stories are maybe irrelevant anymore. They might be doing us a disservice. Mm-hmm. And through the clarity of the rising sun, through understanding what is the light that we want to bring to this world, we could actually ask questions about our paradigms and change the stories that we use.
Yeah, precisely.
I love it. Zaradigm. This is
there's real quick. There's a quote. I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but it's somewhere along the lines of, nobody forces you to be yesterday's version of you, right? You can pick any, you don't have to behave the same way you're behaving right now. Basically, I've heard this from like a parent who said, like, I can tell my kid, you don't have to be the bad kid you were just a minute ago. You have the choice to be anything you want. But I think it works also for us to give us permission. Just because that's how I lived my whole life and how I acted on it doesn't mean I have to enact that for the future if I don't really believe it holds value for me.
So true for us as well as business coaches and as podcasters, as content creators, as influencers, as authors. One book doesn't have to be based on the previous book and so on. So true. I want to ask you about your red tape. Who is a good client for you right now? And specifically, like, who would you say no to?
On the coaching side, it's very easy. It's less of a where they are. Typically, like, people find me because they either are short of getting into their first people leadership role. They want to be a people leader. Most of my clients are already people leaders and they want to refine their skill set and grow in that. And who I love working with are people who already have recognized that you always learn and grow. Nobody has to know everything. And who are willing to do the work. Because if you come into a coaching session and you want 5 tips on how to be a better communicator, I can send you to Google or ChatGPT. You don't need to come to me. But if you want to actually develop those skills, if you want to have that transformation, then yeah, we will work together, right? Because sometimes people come into a session and they would just want the quick fix. Communication and leadership, those are the areas I focus on in coaching, right? Leadership, there are people that have natural talent for leadership, for sure, but leadership is still learned. And you learn from observing other leaders, you learn from good and bad leadership, you learn through your own practice, or you can come, like I run one-on-one coaching, but I also run leadership groups. The leadership groups, for example, one of those groups is what I call a leadership sandbox or like a leadership lab, where you are with peers, other people who are also leaders at Fortune 500 companies. And here you are in a low stakes environment because all of you are pursuing the same goal, but you're learning something together and you get to practice together. You get quick feedback loop before you take it back into what I call the real world, right? In a high stakes scenario where you actually need to apply it. So those are the people I love working with because they already get how this works. Who I would not work with is somebody who wants quick fixes, who has a fixed mindset too, who thinks everything is either proving a point, because you don't need to prove a point to me. If I'm your coach, why are you trying to prove a point to me? I'm trying to help you get to where you need to go. Okay? So that's who I would turn down, would say, this is not a good fit. If you feel like you need to prove something or you already know everything, and you have a high aversion against any feedback, like you're not really receptive to feedback, that won't work really well.
So people that are not coachable, really.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you and I know what we're talking about, right? But for the rest of the world, that's what coaches look for when they do a discovery call. I think many people misunderstand the discovery call is not there to sell somebody. It's to figure out, is the actual coachability? Is this a coaching topic or is it a therapy topic? Sometimes people get those confused too. Mm-hmm.
Is there some criteria in the size of the business or the number of people that work in the business that you would consider as a red tape criteria for you?
So for the leadership coaching, I think I shared with you, right? Typically it's corporate leaders. Now I would work with anybody who has, a leadership role. I think that's part of the discussion, and we have to resolve that. Why would I cut that off? It doesn't add any value to anybody there. However, when it comes to business coaching, there is a criteria. So I have a group called Catalyst, and I work with CEOs from small businesses, typically between 1 million and 10 million. I have some in the group that are at the 20 million mark already, have crossed that. So I won't kick them out, but that's the average where they are. And why is it between 1 and 10? Because there's a certain dynamic that happens at that level. And these people already have employees. It's not just a one-man show, right? So there come different dynamics come into play. And there's also different dynamics when it comes to like, how do I grow my business past this point? These are companies that are at the beginning of having, like putting standard operating procedures in place, for example. So you see, I want to make sure when we're in a group, for example, there's eye-to-eye level discussion, right? So nobody feels like, oh, well, why am I sitting in the same group with this person? I'm already way past this point. So you want to make sure that everybody gets good value out of this. One-on-one coaching sessions a little different, but still then I would look for somebody who is already further along. I don't work on that side with companies that are fresh startups. They just want to teach me how to start a business. I don't do that.
And I think that's very smart because you work with people that have proven that they are successful. Mm-hmm. And that by itself sometimes tell us as coaches that their mindset is in the right place. They are willing to do the work. They're willing to listen. Because usually you need those skills to get to that level. Mm-hmm. Corinna, is there somewhere where people can go and connect with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, they can go to Zaradigm.com. That's paradigm with a Z in the beginning. If you're interested in one of the leadership coaching groups, that's Zaradigm.com/leadershift. Or if you would like to come to the business group, that's called catalyst.zaradigm.com. And you don't have to remember this, of course. You can put all of this in the description box, in the show notes after this recording is over.
We're going to have all the links in the show notes, including some additional surprise content that will be relevant as the show goes live. We won't spoil the surprise for you. So, Corinna, you're a fountain of knowledge. Your practical approach in business and in leadership and in communication is very important for many of us business coaches to learn from and to teach to our clients as well. And the fact that you share so much of your knowledge out there openly is remarkable. And I want to thank you for taking the time to connect with us today. And thank you, everyone, for listening for another episode of Beyond Six Figures.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Six Figures. Check out the extended show notes that include bonus material, practical tips, and exclusive resources on our website, zivraviv.com. Until next time, keep dreaming big and pushing your business and your life beyond six figures.